All right, the New England Patriots. How did they get here? They're 1-4. And it's not just 1-4. By many different metrics, worst offense in the league, worst passing offense, worst rushing offense, one of the worst offensive lines. The point differential. They've scored 55 points. I think that's the fewest in the NFL. And given up 131. They're 0-3 at home. They've now, in the Bill Belichick era, lost more games at home without Tom Brady than they have with Tom Brady. So basically in 3 plus years without Tom Brady versus 20 years with. The 1-4 Patriots. How did they get here? I've got some thoughts.
Okay.
Where would you start?
Well, Tom Brady left.
It's a good starting point.
Yeah.
It's a good starting point.
Uh-huh.
I mean, a big part of this, though, was what were the expectations for this season in New England? I'll tell you, my expectations were similar to the last couple of years. They were going to be a pretty good team, a mid-tier level team that, as I said before last week's show, beat the teams they're supposed to beat and then lose to good teams, right? They're going to lose to Buffalo unless there's 60-mile-an-hour winds. They're going to lose to the Dolphins, who are a better team. They're going to lose to the Chiefs later this season. They're going to get waxed by the Cowboys, who are a better team. But they're also going to beat up on Zach Wilson's Jets. They're going to beat up on Sam Ehlinger when he's the quarterback of the Colts. They're going to beat up on teams that aren't as good overall. But now it's way worse than that. Like, just from the 2-week flip of the switch here, it looks even worse than that. How did they get to the point of just mediocrity? I think Tom Brady fully explains that, right? You go from a guy that's going to cure any kind of roster construction issues, and I think they've had those through the years, but the standard was just higher. So that's how did they get to mediocre? That's the first thing. But how did they get to bad is the second question for the Patriots.
I mean, a big part of it is they just don't have a lot of talent, and they haven't been doing well at acquiring talent. Obviously, Mac Jones, Tom Brady leaves. Now your single biggest thing is how do we get the next quarterback? They went with Mac Jones. That hasn't yet worked out. At the very minimum, it's we don't really know yet, but it's looking worse than it is good. But just look at their drafting in recent years. It's been bad.
Yeah.
I mean, most of the hits are running backs, which is not a good thing. Like, Damian Harris in the 3rd round isn't a bad pick, but it's not great either. Ramondre Stevenson in the 4th round is a pretty good pick. But again, that's not doing too much for you. Other than that, where are the hits? There's a couple of them here or there, but it's like 1 or 2 a draft, and they're typically at non-impact positions, like Michael Owenu in the 6th round. It is a really good draft pick, but the top draft or the top picks, they had 2 2nd-rounders, Kyle Duggar, who's fine, but he's a safety. Josh Uche is pretty good, but he's a situational type of pass rusher rather than an every down guy. They just haven't had the impact players, and when they have had a high draft pick or a 1st-rounder, they've either whiffed or picked a player that hasn't made a massive impact yet. I'm putting this particular draft to the side, like last year's, because it happened 5 minutes ago.
Christian Gonzalez looks like maybe an early hit. Now he's out for the season.
But he's 4 games in, and now he's done for the year. So I don't think we can call that a success yet.
So my high-end theory here, Sam, and I touched on it a little bit on the podcast the other day, and I tweeted through it the other day. My high-end theory, or the question I'll pose, how much do you think Bill Belichick, as the GM, his team building has been skewed by having Brady on the team? Because, again, we're at the sky is falling, part of this New England rebuild here. And it's like, well, Belichick's never had a team this bad. And that's probably, as far as pure offensive line plus playmakers, yeah, it's probably true, right? Maybe the worst team. But it's not like the team building in New England was pristine for 20 years throughout the dynasty.
Right.
The problem was, they rolled out a bottom 3 wide receiver core in multiple seasons with Tom Brady. They made it to the AFC Championship and 1 play away from the Super Bowl with the 31st ranked pass blocking offensive line in the NFL back in 2015. They made it to the Super Bowl in a year where Matthew Slater, a special teamer / wide receiver, was playing safety. and Julian Edelman had to go play slot corner. And at the time, it was like, oh, look at Bill Belichick. Oh, he's flexible and he uses all these guys and everything. It's like, no, they had the second worst defense in the league that year. But because you have Tom Brady in this passing attack, you still are a player or two away from winning a Super Bowl. So how much of you're going through this, when Tom Brady leaves, in the back of Belichick's mind, it's like, why do I need to make a splash play at wide receiver? We won Super Bowls with David Patton and David Givens. Why do I need to make a splash play at receiver? We won the Super Bowl with Cordero Patterson, Chris Hogan, and Philip Dorsett on the outside. You had Edelman and older Gronk, but these how much of that is going through his head, right? Why do I need to invest in this thing? Because we've done it before. So I wonder how much. It's not like a Brady versus Belichick thing. I wonder how much the impact of Tom Brady actually just skews what Belichick thinks he can get away with as the general manager.
Belichick rather reminds me a little bit of, somebody that sort of refuses to accept inflation as a thing. It's like, this is how much this should cost. Yeah. Therefore, I refuse to pay more than this for the thing, even as the market continues to push the price up and up and up, whether it's supply, demand, whatever the cause is. But he's just like, it's not worth more than that. I'm not spending more than that. But at some point, if you need the thing, you just have to pay what it's being sold for. Like, you can't, you know what I mean? There's no fixing that. There's no saying, no, I refuse. I'm determined that it isn't worth more than this sum of money, and therefore I'm not paying that for it. If it's not going to come down to that price, you have to reassess what you're willing to pay. So Belichick is out here still like bargain basement shopping, like waiting for Randy Moss to be available for a 4th-round pick at a cut price contract, and it's just not happening, right? Nobody's yet found, like, that's not repeating itself. So you either accept that that's the reality and you're going to have to actually overpay sooner or later for a guy somewhere just to get it done, or you kind of get where they are, which is the steadfast refusal to adapt and to change to the reality of the marketplace leaves you with a bunch of guys that aren't good enough.
So the interesting thing in all this is, remember the second year after Brady. So 2020 was the first year without Brady. They go get Cam Newton. But in 21, they draft Mac Jones. And that was the year, that was the offseason where they went nuts in free agency.
Right.
Relative, right? I mean, they got a lot of those contracts. They weren't egregious contracts by year 2 or 3. But that was when they spent a ton on Nelson Aguilar and Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith and Matthew Judon, and there was someone else in there that was big money, right? Like Jalen Mills or whoever. And so even the time that they spent, it was like, okay, you spent a ton of money. But your competitors right now are going to get, not at the same time frame, but your competitors are going to get Tyreek Hill. Right? And so that was where at the time you're talking about, hey, he hasn't adjusted here. Mac Jones is sitting there on a rookie contract. So this isn't even apples to apples if you say, well, Tom Brady took a hometown discount and everything. It's like, well, Tom Brady took enough of a discount that maybe you get one more player, right? You get your average starting linebacker. You could bring Kyle Van Noy back or whatever it might be. But that's nothing compared to what a Mac Jones rookie contract gives you. So you can go make splash moves. And look, we are at the point where splash moves are not what they used to be. They used to be like, oh man, don't go pay Albert Haynesworth $100 million in free agency. Don't go pay Ndamukong Suh. Don't go do that stuff, because good teams build through the draft and they don't hit on free agents. And there's risk in free agency. But teams actually hit on those things now, right? Like Tyreek Hill has helped transform the Dolphins. Those big moves. A.J. Brown, I know these are trades, but A.J. Brown has gone and transformed the Eagles. And so that's where I think New England's lacking. While not only do they have money spent in the wrong areas, as everyone around them, right? How are you going to go beat Josh Allen and the Bills? How are you going to beat these teams? As everyone around them is getting better and better and making these aggressive moves, New England's just like, nope, this is how we've done it.
Yeah.
This is how we've done it for 20 plus years.
And I do wonder if that spending spree kind of reinforced that opinion of, look, I tried it your way. I went and blew all the money, and look what I got for it. Nothing.
Yeah.
So now I'm going back to my way, which is I only shop for value. I'm only shopping in the reduced bargain bin, the stuff that's expiring next week, and that's how I'm building this thing. And it's just not going to do it. Like, if you don't have Tom Brady, that doesn't work. You
Yeah.
can't construct a roster that's good enough around a guy that you still don't know is able to play quarterback yet. Like, it's not going to work that way.
So yeah, I think that's the main point, man. Like, they hit lulls in the dynasty era, right? In this 20-year run, they hit these lulls where the defense fell apart a little bit, the receiving core fell apart. They bounced back, but again, it just feels like so the point I was trying to make on Twitter the other day is Belichick can remember a time when he made any kind of move and it worked, right? So they made the AFC in 2006. They made the AFC Championship with Jabbar Gaffney as the number 1 wide receiver,
Right.
And they corrected it in the offseason. They went and got Randy Moss, and then went 16-0 in the regular season and broke records. They also, so it's like there's a point in history where they made an aggressive move, which wasn't actually that aggressive. It was a buy low on a 4th rounder, and they got Hall of Famer Randy Moss. And then they also, 3 years later, traded Randy Moss after week 4, and Brady went on and improved that year, and it was MVP of the league that year. So in Belichick's mind, right, he's like, well, I've made moves to bring in a Randy Moss, but I've also traded Randy Moss and become better. So it's probably easy for him to look at this receiving core coming into the year and like Devontae Parker, Kendrick Bourne, Juju Smith-Schuster, Demario Douglas in the draft, Butte in the draft, Thornton as a deep threat. That's not even close to the worst receiving core they've ever had.
No.
It's really not.
Yeah.
And so in his head, it's like, I've made this work before.
Yeah.
But the reality is, I think Tom Brady made it work before. Tom Brady, the adaptability that the Patriots had for years was made to work because Brady was at the helm. And it didn't matter, for the most part, what they threw at him. When they did have good off seasons, though, they were more likely to win a championship.